Hello, my name is Lauren Buck, and today's presentation will be about mental health. The variables used in this research were derived from the GSS dataset of 2012. The General Social Survey contains responses from Americans concerning multiple social issues. This data is used to track trends over the years and compare views to other countries. The sample size for this dataset was 4,820 participants. The research question for this study is, are particular social class statuses more or less likely to suffer from mental health illness? To provide some insight into this issue, I will discuss two research articles pertaining to mental health illness. Various scholars have conducted research pertaining to mental health wellness. One quantitative study conducted in England assessed and categorized England's minorities based on their ethnicity and analyzed the likelihood of having a mental disorder being influenced by their income status. Results illustrated that lower income groups are prone to inequality in mental health. A longitudinal study conducted by Rubin, Evans, and Wilkinson found that the higher one's perceived status in society, the better one's mental health and well-being. Although this research used a mediating variable, a variable that explains the connection between the independent variable and the dependent variable, it does support the notion that one's subjective class can impact one's mental health wellness. The two studies that I mentioned are provided to support the hypothesis that lower class participants are more likely to suffer from mental distress. The articles mentioned above researched influences of an individual's mental health. The research above also studied demographic data as well as mediating variables. This research will only focus on two variables and the relationship between them. The dependent variable used for this research was mental health. This survey questions, now thinking about your mental health, which includes stress, depression, and problems with emotions, for how many days during the past 30 days was your mental health not good? The categories range from 0 days to 30 days. The independent variable used for this research was class. This variable question, if you were asked to use one of the four names for your social class, which would you say you belong in? The lower class, the working class, the middle class, or the upper class? The categories were lower class, working class, middle class, and upper class. Subjects that took the 30 Days of Mental Health Illness survey typically identified 0 days of struggling with mental distress. The mean is 3.91. On average, applicants taking this survey struggled with their mental health for 3 days out of 30 days. The standard deviation is 6.712, meaning there was a large variation amongst respondents' answers for this survey. Participants that took the subjective class identification survey had the majority of respondents identify as working class citizens. The lowest claim was upper class at 3.3% of respondents claiming this status. This survey had the lowest standard deviation of 0.714. For cross-tabulation, variable mental health needed to be recoded to reduce the level of measurement in order to run the cross-tab test. The new recoded variable was mental health groups. The mental health groups variable categories consisted of 6 groups: 0 to 4 days, 5 to 9 days, 10 to 14 days, 15 to 19 days, 20 to 24 days, and 25 to 30 days. After running the test, working, middle, and upper class percentages for 0 to 4 days of mental health distress varied minimally. These categories did, however, vary from the lower class percentages for 0 to 4 days of mental distress. Epsilons for row, the 0 to 4 days, is working from lower is 33.3%, middle from lower is 25.8%, and upper from lower is 23.5%. Because these differences exceeded 10%, this deems the variable sufficient enough to conduct further statistical analysis. Spearman correlation was used to measure the strength and direction of association between two ranked variables. Data output yielded a p-value of negative 0.059, meaning that knowing the participant's subjective class identification will decrease our prediction of their mental health wellness within a 30-day time period by 5.9%. Because the value of measures of association ranged between negative 0.01 and negative 0.09, this indicates a weak or uninteresting association. The independent variable subjective class identification did not reduce the error in predicting the dependent variable mental health illness. In conclusion, there were no significant associations, and there was a weak correlation between the variables. ANOVA, analysis of variance, was used to measure the tested significance between two variables, mental health and class. This test of significance was chosen because mental health is a continuous variable, and class is a categorical variable with more than 2 categories. Presented are the 5 steps to testing a hypothesis. Step 1. Name the hypothesis along with the null hypothesis. The hypothesis is one's mental health wellness is correlated to one's subjective class identification. The null hypothesis is one's mental health wellness is not correlated to one's subjective class identification. Step 2 is identifying the level of significance. For this research, it was at 0.05. Number 3, the charts are below. For step 4, 0.000 is less than 0.05. We can reject the null hypothesis according to Levine's test. The ANOVA significance level between groups was 0.033, which is less than 0.05. Because the ANOVA test showed a level of significance, a post hoc test Tucky will be performed to show if there's a statistical difference between the groups. The chart is titled Multiple Comparisons Tucky HSD, which is the next slide. Step 5 is stating the conclusion. There is a statistical significance difference between groups as determined by one-way ANOVA. According to the test of significance, we can reject the null hypothesis. This means that there is a correlation between one's mental health, wellness, and their subjective class identification. Observations from the frequency table show that lower class participants are more likely to suffer from mental illness by 5 days. Middle class and upper class participants are similar in days of mental distress at 3 days, and working class participants are more likely to claim 4 days of mental illness. The ANOVA test shows that the significance value between groups is 0.033. Data shown from this graph are derived from the post hoc test using Tucky. Multiple comparisons can be observed below in the chart. The difference in middle class and working class is 0.077. Lower class and middle class differ by 0.130. Lower class and upper class differ by 0.479. Lower class and working class differ by 0.647. Working class and upper class differ by 0.839. And there are no differences between the participants that identified as middle class and upper class. Because the comparisons between groups did not yield significant values below 0.05, this illustrated that there were no significant differences in the groups. In conclusion, there is statistical evidence that supports that there is a correlation between an individual's mental health wellness and their subjective class identification. This does not mean that one's class identification influences their mental health wellness. The ANOVA test did support that lower class was more inclined to suffer from mental illness when compared to its counterparts. However, further analysis using the post hoc Tucky test showed no significance between the variables. No substantial statistical evidence was able to provide statistical significance, indicating that one's mental health could be determined by their class identification.